It's been about 3 years since we created this garden, and there are a lot of regrets that I have about this garden, and we're going to go over some of them today so that you don't make the same mistakes. And honestly, they're easy mistakes. This was our first large scale garden that we ever made, so they were bound to be mistakes. And I think a lot of it goes down to the actual type of raised beds that we ended up using. Now, I love raised garden beds. I think they're absolutely amazing. I think if you're looking for a way to amend your soil very easily because you're using whatever soil you want, you're filling your raised garden beds. And if you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit better on the knees, so you don't actually have to be on the ground doing work, you can work at a better height, I think raised garden beds are an amazing option. Although I think if I were going to do it again, I would not use the Douglas fir wood that we used, and instead I'd probably use metal garden beds. And let's talk about why. Metal garden beds have come a long way in the past couple of years. There are so many different types that you can get. They come in a range of different colors, looks, and configurations. So you can really run the gamut on how you want to configure and design your garden. What's also really cool is a lot of them can have rounded or even straight edges. So opposed to working with wood where you're really looking at more hard edges and corners, you can work with fun, more organic shapes as well as colors and designs that you can't always do with wood. For our garden, we were definitely stuck in a very rigid design of garden bed sizes. Another thing that we decided to do was we went really big on some of our garden beds. We have a nice big 8x8 garden bed, but you can't even get to the center of the bed, which really prohibits a lot of the growing that happens in there. Oftentimes we end up just putting in marigolds or flowers in the center to help bring in pollinators, but it'd be really nice if we could utilize that space a lot better for growing more fruits, vegetables, and foods that we can actually be eating. If we think about the actual durability of our wooden raised beds, they definitely are not as durable as, say, a metal raised garden bed because the wood does warp and it's more of a living organism than metal is. So here we've added brackets to keep this piece better together, but there's still so much separation and warping that happens. Also, for wood, there is definitely that one price that you pay, and oftentimes it's going to come off a lot cheaper to build raised beds out of wood than per se metal, but in the long run, there is a lot more work that needs to go into maintaining and keeping your wood beds. Every year, we need to actually go in and stain or make sure that we're putting a sealant on our wood so that it does hold up to the elements of the winter as well as just the elements all year. Now, these beds are a couple years old and they're definitely not going to withstand the heat, snow, climate, elements of Mother Nature, as well as our metal beds are going to be. And our metal beds are actually older in some of this garden than our wooden beds. And one thing that I did see is a lot of people will say, well, metal can be a lot heavier. In today's day and age, the metal garden beds that you're making are so thin. They're actually lighter and easier to maneuver than a lot of the wooden beds. To take this apart and rebuild this somewhere else, I don't want to do that. This is really heavy and it would take a lot more work than moving some of the metal beds. As long as you can empty it out, the dirt is definitely the heaviest part of any of your metal beds as opposed to these wooden ones. We all know that there are good bugs and bad bugs that can be in your garden. The good bugs we want to be able to allow to crawl up inside and help treat the dirt and help amend the dirt and make it a really nice, fun place for the dirt to really thrive. That's why all of our raised beds, we do not put a bottom on, whether that be our wood or our metal ones, and you can oftentimes purchase all of your raised beds the same way. But what you do want to think about is how any pests or buggies are going to get in on the outside. Anything like slugs or bugs that are not beneficial for the garden can easily climb up the sides of wooden garden boxes because it's similar to trees and their natural environment. I have noticed, and there's a lot of research shown, that metal garden beds are a lot harder for those types of pests to actually crawl up the side. It's a lot slippier. It's also a lot easier to clean because it isn't going to pull in those ingredients into the wood and attract them in. Something like this you can actually hose off really easily, and it usually creates a more sterilized environment for your plants and veggies to grow in. So metal garden beds are a really great medium to use when building out your raised garden. One major difference between the wood and metal raised beds can be the retention of heat and the ease of access for that heat to also be released. Now, a metal garden bed oftentimes is going to be a lot thinner, and it can be more susceptible to having heat radiate in the heat of summer, whereas your wooden beds are going to keep the soil a lot cooler. They're also going to help regulate the temperature in the winter, not letting it get as cold in the winter. So this is definitely a great reason to have wooden garden beds. But I do think that if we were to reimagine and redesign this whole garden, I would definitely redo it in metal. I love the look of our Douglas fir boxes. I think they're really fun, unique. They add character to the space, but for the longevity and lifespan of our garden, I really do wish that if I could go back in time, I would choose to do metal raised garden beds. Share your thoughts and if you would do the same or if you choose wood. I'd love to hear it, and we'll see you guys again next time. Bye.